Hey, welcome to the Social 333 podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bentley. Today, my guest is Levi Lascsak. Levi, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I've been waiting for you to come on the show. I'm a fan. I've been watching your stuff ever since we talked a little bit earlier, but like ever since I saw your YouTube, not YouTube, but your Instagram stuff about your success, obviously. We're in the same market in Dallas, DFW area. Or Dallas, Fort Worth area. But I just wanted to get you on the show because I think it's not only a great story, but also you offer it to other people, which is real cool. I know in our industry, in real estate, you kind of try not to talk about marketing to other people because you're afraid they're going to steal your ideas and stuff like that. And you're just very kind of open and honest about what works and what doesn't work and that. Talk a little bit about yourself to the camera and then and to the audience about who you are and what you got.
Oh, well, thanks. So it's funny, if I can just back up real quick on what you mentioned, like sharing things freely, and people are always working from typically a scarcity mindset. And that, they don't want to share stuff or they're worried people are going to steal their stuff. And it's something that I've always done. I remember I used to sell cell phones at Costco. So if you've ever been inside of Costco and you see that little cell phone booth, like I was doing that in 2006.
Wow.
And so and it's funny because I had a great friend there who is a great friend now. But initially I went to a different store one day and to do some paperwork. The system was kind of clunky back then, so sometimes you had to do this or that. I had to sell a phone out of another location, and then you had to go there and do the paperwork or something. So, and we were just always like hustling to sell some phones. And anyways, this guy that was working that booth there, he's like, "Oh, you're Levi," and he goes, "I always see your name at the top of the list for top salespeople." Because I always sold over 100 phones a month in Costco, which if you think about that, that's nobody goes to Costco to buy a cell phone, at least not in 2006.
Yep.
And so I was always out there hustling and everything. And so he just started asking me a ton of questions. And one of the things he asked me was like, what's the money shift? Like when's the best hours to work? And I told him, I was like, well, my shift is the money shift.
Right.
And he was like, oh, I said, so I don't care. I said, I'm not trying to cherry pick perfect times of the day or perfect days. I said, when I'm working, I know I'm going to sell the most phones because that's the mindset I have going into it. And so I just told him a lot of the things that I did. And at the end, he asked me that question. He goes, wow, man. He goes, people are always so closed off. They don't want to share their secrets. He goes, why are you so open about it and everything? And I remember because he told me this story back to me, so and it always resonated with me. But he said, I told him, I go, well, you're not me. And so a little bit of ego or a little bit of confidence, but at the same time, I was always like, look, I'm always striving to be the best I can, and no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm selling cell phones at Costco, I sold gym memberships at Bally Total Fitness, and then that guy actually moved into the pharmaceutical industry, and then he recruited me to the pharmaceutical industry because he knew who I was as a person and as a salesperson. And I didn't have a college degree either. So I was the only person that ever got hired into this pharmaceutical company without a college degree, which that was pretty much basic. Like you had to have a college degree to work for a pharmaceutical company. And I remember during that interview, it was funny, the vice president of the company interviewed me. And at the end of the interview, he said, he goes, I love everything about you, Levi, but one thing that really bothers me is you don't have a college degree. And he said, so how are you going to have any credibility talking with doctors who spend pretty much their entire lives in school? Not only does it take them, 8 years or 10 years to get through school, but then every other year they're doing continuing education, all those types of things, rigorous, not like real estate CE, but like serious CE. And he told me this story back to me too, which always resonated with me as well. And he said, I said, well, you've been in the industry, the pharmaceutical industry for 20 years. I said, have you ever met anybody without a college degree that was successful? And he said, yeah, I know of one guy. And I said, then I will be too.
Nice.
And so I've always had a mindset of just no matter what, no excuses, just work to be the best who you can be in any industry, no matter what it is. and also, give back. I mean, help whoever asks a question, and I wasn't selling anything at that time to anybody. I wasn't developing programs or anything like that. So, for me to step into real estate in 2020, which is what happened, I went from pharmaceuticals to financial services. I started my own financial services business with another guy in 2015. And we got contracts with Dallas ISD. So I was working with teachers on their retirement planning at the schools. Very lucrative because I was making multiple six figures, typically around $300,000 a year, but I worked 8 months of the year. And so I took summers off. I had 2 weeks off for Christmas, a week off for Thanksgiving, every 4-day weekend you could imagine. I never worked evenings. I never worked weekends. And I was living my best life at that time. And, and I did that for 5 years. And I thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life until 2020 happened and school shut down and travel shut down. And if I wasn't doing that, like during the summer, I traveled. I went to 24 countries within 3 years. Wow. And so I was just very comfortable. I wasn't trying to be, a multimillionaire or anything like that. I was just like, man, I'm making a few $100,000 a year, living a modest lifestyle, traveling the world, great time. And then, 2020, everything turned upside down. And so I found myself at that time, I was 41 years old. I'm 45 now. And I'm like, at that time, I'm 41 and my whole world shuts down. And so I'm sitting there going, wow, how do I start over without starting over? Because that, you talk about the midlife crisis, so to speak. And although I think the whole world went through it at that moment, and I've got really great friends in real estate. Do you know Michael Reese?
I've heard that name.
Of him, yeah. So I actually started my sales career with him at Bally Total Fitness in 2001. Wow. He recruited me to gym members to sell gym memberships, and that's what got me into sales, and then he went into real estate in 2002 and always tried to get me to become an agent. Funny story is that I did get licensed in 2004, but I had my license for 1 week. I was still in the reserves with the military. And then I got activated and I was deployed for 18 months. Wow. And so my license expired. And whenever I came home, I was kind of like, well, I never really wanted to be a real estate agent anyway. So that's when I went on to sell cell phones at Costco instead, which I did very well there. I became a district manager and then I got recruited to the pharma company and then, and then started the financial services business. But each one of those times, I just always said, I have a simple formula for success. Who's at the top? How did they get there? How can I model it? How can I adjust it to fit my personality? And then can I actually do it better? So I would always look for, at Bally's, Michael Reese was the best salesperson at membership. So I just looked at him and said, okay, how'd you do it? I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel. I'm just basically going to model everything you're doing, but then I'm going to adjust to fit me and my personality. I'm not going to try to be Michael, and I'm going to adjust and try different things and see if I can actually beat him. So I always ask the question too, like, Michael, when you started, what'd you do your first month of sales? What'd you do your first 6 months? What'd you do your first year? And it just gave me benchmarks to set a goal towards and to try to see if I could beat that. And I did the same thing when I sold cell phones. I sought out the top salesperson at the company and I said, hey, what did you sell your first month? With 6 months in your first year. And at that time, there was only like 1 or 2 people selling 100 phones a month, and they called that the Century Club. Cool. And so I was like, well, that's where I want to be, right. So how do I do that? And same thing in pharma. Whenever I got into pharmaceutical, I looked up the top reps, and I said, okay, what are they doing? I actually I asked, could I go meet them? Could I go hang out with them? The top salesperson in pharma lived in Oklahoma. I got up one morning and asked my district manager, I said, hey, can I get all my calls done Monday through Thursday, and would you let me go drive up to Oklahoma on Friday and ride with this guy named Brian? And he goes, man, nobody's ever asked me that before. I was like, well, can I do it? And he goes, sure, why not? So I worked extra hours Monday through Thursday just so I could go out on Friday, drove 3 hours to Oklahoma, spent a whole day with him, just watched what he did, never butted in, never tried. I just sit there and observe, and I drove home thinking, okay, I like what he did there. I would probably change this. I would do this differently. And it gave me a little, my own model, to try to be the best. And I rose to the top of that company as well. So whenever I came into real estate though, the problem is that, Michael Reese built his business off postcards. And, I just lost my business. I spent the summer actually investing in a lot of other stuff because I really didn't want to be a real estate agent. So I spent a lot of money elsewhere. So I ran through a lot of cash because none of it worked out. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to become a real estate agent, very reluctantly. But then I also thought, well, I have to do things differently. Because right now I didn't want to cold call and door knock. I've done both of those in my sales career. Didn't feel like starting over again, especially at 41. So I was like, those are kind of out for me. I could do it mentally, but I didn't want to do it. So the desire was not there. Networking events were out of the question because of nobody was doing networking events. You couldn't even talk to your neighbor, your 6 foot rule and all this stuff. So there was nothing going on in person. And so I was like, okay, well, it's going to have to be social media, and I was anti-social media at that time because, it didn't exist when I was in high school. We didn't even have cell phones. And so I was always kind of proud and I could say egotistical that I was not on social media. I was like, I'm a people person. I like to sit in front of my client. I like to read body language and, see their expressions. And that's how I did my sales, but it was all one-on-one. And, so you can't scale past yourself if you're doing everything yourself.
Right.
And also it was just a different time. So I said, all right, well, I got to do things differently. It's going to have to be social media, but I was smart enough to say, okay, there's a lot of social platforms out there, so I'm not going to try to be on every one of them. I think that's a big mistake that agents make coming into the business or even starting out on social is somebody usually tells them, hey, you need to be everywhere. You need to be loud. You need to be everywhere. Open up every single platform. And then what happens is that you never end up getting good at one platform. So you end up putting 20% effort across 5 different platforms. So I said, okay, I'm not going to do that because it also seemed a little overwhelming to me. So I said, I'm going to choose one platform and I'm going to go all in on that platform. But I didn't know which platform. So I had to kind of research and try to get to know each platform. And I was like, well, TikTok, I wish I would have paid a little bit more attention to TikTok because that was a perfect time to probably gain a lot of ground on there. But what I really kind of saw I was like, I deem myself as I don't want to be a dancing real estate agent, instead of thinking about it from the business side. Instagram, kind of the same format. Nobody's on Facebook as far as I was concerned. And so YouTube was actually the last choice. So whenever I started to just dig into YouTube and then I read something that said, YouTube is a search engine, not a social media platform. And I thought, oh, okay, well, actually, that makes me more comfortable. It's not a social platform. And also, I didn't know how to be a good agent. And I felt like if I was on TikTok or Instagram, I had to pretend like I was this great agent, even though I hadn't even sold a home. So I thought, well, the thing is that I'm a Dallas resident. I've lived in Dallas for over 20 years. I know the neighborhoods. I know the areas. I know the hot spots. I know neighborhoods. I've got friends that live there. I've lived in half the areas in Dallas, I've worked everywhere. I've worked all over the Metroplex. So I didn't have to fake that, and then I realized, okay, I started to look up search terms and things like that. And of course, this was a time when a lot of people start moving to Dallas, especially from coastal areas and West Coast and East Coast, especially with high restrictions and taxes and regulations. And whenever I saw that, okay, well, people are actually searching out neighborhoods and things like that, then I thought, okay, well, that stuff I can talk about. I don't have to pretend to be this amazing agent or some top producer or anything like that. I can just be myself and kind of like be the tour guide of Dallas and show people neighborhoods. And so that was the approach that I took. And I was able to be a expert basically from what I knew, which was, I'm a homeowner, I'm a Dallas resident. And that's what really people are looking for. They don't typically start their search by looking for an agent. Hey, honey, it's time to buy a house. Let's go find a really good agent. They usually say, hey, honey, it's time to buy a house or sell my house, or, let's start searching out neighborhoods and schools and areas and, stuff to do, maybe churches, those types of things. And so that's how I moved into that. And timing definitely helped with that as well. It was a perfect time to start the channel. I think it's still a perfect time to start a channel, but it's the, best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is today. But yeah, it was, timing definitely helped out. And so I just went all in on YouTube. I studied the platform for a couple of months, and I had time on my side because I had nothing to do
Right.
anyways. And so I was like, okay. And so I sat in front of my computer. I watched 1,000 YouTube videos. I bought, 10 different YouTube marketing books off of Amazon. And I read all of those. One or two of them were probably really useful. The other 8 or so, not so much. But I still had a really good understanding of the platform. And I think right now the social platforms are so powerful. You need an understanding of the platform. You need to know how they work, what makes them work, and how you can, really maximize the potential of those platforms. And I think people think they just can post a couple of videos and it's going to do something, and it's not. I mean, it's strategy, it's consistency, all of that molds together. And then eventually you'll be successful if you don't quit on it. And again, yeah, timing helped me out. But now, even in these last 2 years of probably the worst real estate market we've seen in quite some time, I mean, last year was the lowest transaction count in the last 30 years. And this year might be the same, if not lower. And we're still doing well, still doing a significant amount of business. And it's because of the channel and the people, and it's all inbound. So all the phone calls, all the emails, everything are inbound. They're coming to us. So in this time period, I've never made a single cold call. I've never door knocked. I've never sent out a postcard. I don't even go to a networking event with business cards with that intention. I don't bug my neighbors or anything like that, or get upset if they list with somebody else. So, it's not a big deal. That's not really my market. I just stick to what I do, is make my videos, and I'll attract the business that I need. And so been able to do that without any ad spend either, because YouTube is the most content creator friendly platform out there. And in the first 4 years of business, that led to 482 transactions, so, it's going pretty well. And that's, some people might not even hit 500 transactions in their career.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just crazy to think. But again, I came in with the same mindset, and I was really concerned about that too, because I thought real estate, that's kind of different than just contract sales, or, selling a cell phone, or pharmaceuticals, or a gym membership to where I can sit down with somebody, pretty much talk you into whatever I have and get you to sign something or walk out the door with it. It's a whole different ballgame. So coming into real estate, I also thought, man, is it possible? But I just had a goal that first year of making $100,000. Really, I was just like, look, if I can do 6 figures, I think that's even better than most agents do in their first year. I mean, actually, if you look at the NAR stats, National Association of Realtors, they say the average income of a 2-year agent is $8,100 a year. $8,100 a year. That's like selling one home.
Wow.
If that. And I think the stats last year were like 70% or 62 or 70% of agents didn't even sell a home.
Yeah.
For last year.
Yeah.
So
I think this year is going to be higher.
Yeah. So when I came in, I was just like, look, can I make $100,000? That'll put me above average, or probably even in the top 10%. And that I would have been satisfied with that. But in the first year, in 2021, I ended up closing $33.5 million. It was over $1 million in GCI from a YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's the thing that's really impressive. And like I said, I'm a fan. I watch you from kind of afar, and not only is it the channel and just you talking and you just being you and just a cool dude, just talking about whatever. And it's like, this is, I've tried to model it. I can't do it consistently because I run the brokerage and got other stuff. But I really looked at it. I really looked at how you did it and how you're doing it now. And then now I'm looking at it more because I'm 47, right? So I'm kind of on the same track as you. I've done a lot of the stuff that you've talked about. I've been there and been in those shoes. So now I'm looking at it like, okay, well, cool. Now I want to go do some marlin fishing, right? Like I want to go spend some time, like not, sitting in the Dallas sun, showing 10 homes to 10 different buyers on a Saturday and Sunday, right? Like I'm tired of that. And what you built is really, really cool, which is now that you have the channel, now that you do the creative, you can now say, hey, look, like I've got this person that wants to come in, relocate, whatever it is. Can you go show them homes? And while I continue to go out and get more marketing, more leads, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, do the creative side of it, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is the missing piece for a lot of people when you get into real estate or just sales in general, where you just flat line, all you do all day is sell, 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 and you don't build an organization where they can actually, get some help, that people are looking for an extra cell phone and you're not there that day and you still get the commission override and different stuff. So I think that's really, really cool and something I totally admire about your business. The other thing that was really, really interesting is, and a lot of people as agents, you were kind of talking about, is that they just don't focus on one thing. Like I get a lot of agents and they'll be like, okay, well, I'm going to do postcards because the guy that's been selling for 30 years, it does postcards. And you're like, okay, well, cool. Like, well, he's been doing it for 30 years. And like, if you want to go do postcards, by all means. And they're like, oh, no, like I want to do TikToks and I want to, just like you're saying, like shaking my car and be like, I sell like, homes in Highland Park. And you're like, no, you don't. But like, shake all you want in the car, right? It's just, I kind of saw that, and that was kind of how I was when I first started. Like I was at a brokerage, and they're very social media heavy, and they're like, "Oh yeah, just go onto Twitter. I got a sale off of here. went on to, Facebook. I got a sale onto here," and it was never really very regimented. Like the podcast that I started that we're on now, like it just started on YouTube. That's all it was on YouTube, and then it started to kind of explore as it got bigger.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that a lot of agents and a lot of even business owners like kind of don't do, because we have marketing people that come through and they'll just, they'll be like, oh, I want to have 500 leads in 500 days, and they're like, but I'm going to have it with this and I'm going to start that this week and that's not working this week. So I'm going to start this next week. And before you know it, they just have a lot of nothing.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you've kind of seen in your experience? Yeah,
I mean, lack of focus is a big problem for a lot of people. Shiny object syndrome, all of those. So but it doesn't have to be video. And I do this at speaking events. This is one of my favorite experiments. Is I always, people talk about, well, I don't know, I think YouTube's saturated now, or well, Levi, you're doing it in Dallas, so there's no room left. And I'm like, look, did you look at the transaction count last month in Dallas? First of all, I didn't do anywhere close to that, so there's room.
Right.
But the thing is like at speaking events, I'll ask the room, I'll say, okay, how many here have ever stand up if you've ever done an open house or called a for sale by owner, and typically the whole room will stand up. And then I'll just say, well, stay standing if you've ever read 10 books on open house marketing. There's never anybody left standing. Right. I'll say, stay standing if you've ever read 10 books on for sale by owner, marketing. No, nobody's left standing. And I say, so are open houses saturated? Or is FSBO marketing saturated? I mean, so my point is that who really takes the time to study and understand what they're trying to go after? I know of agents that built their whole career off of open houses. And guess what? They mastered a system, a process, a plan. Maybe they didn't write a book about it, but they did them every single week or I knew one guy that did them weekdays. Wow. So that he could have weekends off. He was like, my weekends are for my family. They're not for real estate. So he always did open house, and everyone's like, you do open houses during the week? Oh my God. Like they'd never heard of that before. I know of an agent that he said, I do open houses from 5 to 7 on weekdays because everyone's driving home from work and they'll see the signs. And he goes, and that's where I do my office work, is in the open house. He'll go, so I'll do 5 different open houses a week on, listings, whether they're my listings or somebody else's listings. And I'll just sit in there and I'll do my computer work and everything else I'm doing during that time. But then I'm doing an open house at the same time. So there's ways to do things a lot differently to be more effective about it. And, that's the thing about YouTube is I started a channel in 2011. I was going through a health journey at that time. And I did what most people do in every form of business, which is I started a channel. Great, kudos, but I did no research, no studying, no preparation, didn't understand the platform, didn't have a support system, didn't get a coach, didn't try to learn it. And I did what everybody else does is I made 3 videos, got no views, no comments, and then I quit after 3 videos.
Right.
And if I would have taken the approach now back then in 2011, I might be a health coach right now instead of a real estate agent. And I would be considered an OG because I started in 2011, right? I could be like, oh, I've been on the platform for 15 years.
Right.
So I had the idea back then, but I didn't have the capacity, the knowledge capacity to grow beyond myself or to look for help or to research or read. And that's how people come into real estate. They come into real estate maybe because they lost a job. They see it on TV. It looks glamorous. Somebody tells them you'd be a great agent. Or somebody talks them into it. And then they get through there and they're like, what do I got to do? Well, you need to make 50 calls a day. Okay. And then they sit there and they hate it. But then there's an agent who's like, you know what? I'm going to master making cold calls every day, and they learn it, they study it, they understand it, they read some books, and they become great at it. And then they'll call 5 people and actually get, something out of, 5 phone calls instead of calling 50 people and getting nothing. So there's so much information out there right now, too much information. But I also believe in the concept, what I call hyper learning, that it doesn't take long. If you were to sit down for 60 days and study FSBO marketing or open house marketing or YouTube or even TikTok or Instagram, and you just studied it for 60 days, built out a little plan, and then started to implement and don't quit, you'll be successful. And you'll probably be in the top 1% because nobody else is doing that.
I know that you run a program, that's where I found you, where you not only, talk about your own success, but also share a lot of it as well. I think it's the real estate passive prospecting.
Passive prospecting, yep.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that, and then, anything else you want to talk about. Yeah,
I mean, if you go on my Instagram account, we're going to be doing a 5-day challenge later this month, or depending on when you hear this, we pretty much do them every month. So if you find this podcast next month, we'll probably be doing one next month. But yeah, you can click on my Instagram link and go to a 5-day challenge. You can also get my free book of passive prospecting, which I wrote that book, and it's still very relevant. It's actually 2 years old now, but it's still extremely relevant to help you understand the principles of passive prospecting through YouTube and the process. And the reason I call it passive prospecting is because, I make one video and it goes to work for me, nonstop every single day. I was just sharing that on a call this morning. I was looking at my YouTube stats, and in the last 2 days, it was 11,600 people watching the channel in the last 2 days.
Wow.
And I'm just telling you, like, where could you do that manually? You can't call, you can't make that many phone calls. You can't network with that many people. You can't knock that many doors. You could have a team of 10 people and you still wouldn't even reach those numbers. So and this last month, the channel had 4 million impressions.
Wow. And
YouTube counts an impression as your thumbnail being on somebody's screen long enough for them to decide whether or not they want to click on your video.
Wow.
So if you think of a thumbnail is a postcard. A thumbnail is a billboard. A thumbnail is a magazine cover. And so, but it's in the most powerful form, which is on a screen. And then also look at, in the last 28 days, 67% of our viewership has come from TV.
Wow.
So I'm calling it the new reality show. If you've ever watched Owning Manhattan or Fix or Flop or, $1 Million Listing, as we all like to watch, right? And then you ever sit there and you go, how'd they get on TV? I'm a better agent than they are, or, oh my God, they're so they're embarrassing themselves. They're sitting there catfighting with somebody else on TV. I should have my own show. Well, YouTube is your own reality show. Yeah. And, people... this last week, it was crazy because in this last week, every single day, I got noticed by somebody in the community who's like, hey, I see your videos. I like your videos. I mean, I was out at the shopping center and this couple comes up to me and they're like, oh, we love your videos. We moved from Croatia, because of, we picked Frisco because of your channel, and then somebody at church, and then a guy at the gym, and then it was a guy driving by. I was out walking the dog, and this guy literally hits the brakes on his car, and he's like, I knew I would see you one day walking through this community, so it's crazy. And it's like, and I just, and that was never the intention of starting it, but that is branding. That is branding at its best right there. So people are recognizing me around the community, and that's pretty cool. And also it's just something that you can't replicate any other way. And, TV, is the ultimate form of marketing, in my opinion. Yep. And so, and now YouTube is actually the #1 watched app.
Wow.
Beats out Netflix.
Wow.
On TV. And so that's huge. I mean, and it has more watch time than Netflix and any other app. So people are spending more time on YouTube, on their TVs. And YouTube just announced too that TV has overtaken viewership on mobile with YouTube.
Wow.
Which mobile has dominated everything for the last decade. So it's pretty crazy. You think people are sitting on their couch or even laying in bed watching our videos.
Yeah.
So I mean that builds relationships for you.
Levi, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, wanted to get started with their program, maybe ask you some questions like I have, where do they find you?
Yeah, I mean, Levi Lascsak on Instagram. That's probably the easiest spot. I'll promote my Instagram for YouTube, but that's, again, like YouTube's not a social platform, really. Right. It's a search engine, so it's not like you DM me on YouTube. You could leave a comment, I'm sure. But yeah, best way is on Instagram. But I only check that like once a day, usually at the end of the day. So, I do everything I can not to be on there throughout the day. And that goes into focus and, like this morning, I did a webinar. I recorded a video before I came over here. We're going to record a couple of videos, and next week I go out of town again. I told you we just came back from Belize. I'm actually going back to Belize again. It was just weird the way that worked out, but I had already booked my trip, and then Travis said he wanted to go, so we just booked a separate trip. But that's the freedom you have, though. It's... There's not a single agent out there that typically says, well, I already got a vacation scheduled, so I'm not going. Travis is like, well, I want to go to Belize. He goes, but I can't go the time you're going because my kids are back in school. And I was like, okay, well, let's just book a different time. Mm-hmm. And I don't even think about, oh my God, my business is going to fall apart. Right. I'm going to miss out. You know what I did? I just recorded 2 extra videos that will go out whenever I'm in Belize. Mm-hmm. And it was, I'll show you, I want to share with you just real quick, because this, Travis just texted me right before I walked in here, and he says this, he sends me a screenshot, by the way, of his calendar. If you see that calendar, I'll actually just show the camera real quick. You see his calendar. It's like all booked out. And he goes, hey, great job, brother. Just wanted to say thank you for all you do. Putting out those 2 videos a week was almost an instant game changer. So I really appreciate all the hard work. All the orange are real estate calls this week, 3 clients in town this weekend, and a 4th local listing appointment for Sunday.
Nice.
So that's what's happening this week. So 3 clients looking to buy in this market. Mm-hmm. And guess what? They know about interest rates. They know about tariffs. They know about taxes. They know about inflation. They know about everything else, all these global conflicts going on. They know about this stuff, and they're like, but we're still coming. We're going to buy a house. And then the 4th listing appointment this week, from the channel. So that's a pretty good week,
it's a great week.
And so, that's the power of, and I was on vacation last week, and I'm leaving again next week. Right. And last year, we spent time, Travis did an Ironman last year in Barcelona. Wow. And he was like, I want to go to Barcelona. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll go, and he's like, we're just going to go for the week. And I was like, no, dude, I was like, if we're going to Europe, we're going to stay there at least 2 weeks, you know, if we're going to travel all that way. And he was like, really? And I don't think he's really ever done that himself in his life. And I was like, yeah, plus you don't want to just be there, run an Ironman, and then come home. You got to get out and let's stay the week after. That way you can enjoy it. Cause I knew, he wasn't going to want to do anything too crazy, to train. But I mean, we took our families, everything. We took Alex and his family, and, and that's the cool thing about it. is, it's like, okay, out of the market for 2 weeks, no big deal. I had 3 speaking events 3 weeks in a row in Las Vegas. Wow. And I was like, man, I really don't want to fly back and forth, time zone change, blah, 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 different, hotels. And my wife was actually like, let's just go there for 3 weeks and stay. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And I didn't even think twice about that, because it's like, okay, cool, I can do that. I'm going to record a couple extra videos before I go, so I don't have to worry about that. And we'll go there, and I can still do Zoom calls or, take phone calls, whatever I need to do. But the leads are handled on the back end. Right. The team handles everything. So I'm not worried about answering the phone, showing homes, writing contracts, or things like that. So, it allows me to do these types of things. And then, in 2 months, we'll go to Brazil for 10 days again, and that was, we've been to Cabo this year, so that's a lot, it's a lot of time, but, and that's what I wanted to get back to, because before, that's what I was doing before COVID. Right. I was traveling, and that's really what I love to do, is travel and be in different cultures and environments. And 2021, 22 was building. Plus, travel was not that great at that time. Right. Still, everybody was really reluctant. A lot of these countries were closed down, for a year or so, even after that. So, I didn't want to travel anywhere that I might have to do crazy stuff just to get in. Right. So, I kind of took a break from that. Now I'm like, hey, look, everything's established and built out, and so we're going to travel again. So, that's the freedom that it can do for you. So it's been a good ride, and just reach out on Instagram, at Levi Lascsak. And we're doing a 5-day challenge if anybody wants to be a part of that.
Awesome. Levi, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome.